Hey guys, good morning. Well, good afternoon now. Good afternoon. I hope everybody's having an amazing Sunday. Today we having a great conversation, which means surviving trauma and that journey to self healing. How does that start? Where do you begin? Um, what are the things that maybe you should be trying to look at if that's something that you're interested in doing? Of course, you know me. I'm Karen, your favorite virtual assistant, and of course, go ahead, Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail, your customer experience business strategist. And today we are so happy to have Shara with us. And today's topic is what, Karen? What are we talking about before I introduce Shara?
Of course, the surviving trauma, that journey to self healing, and
Yes,
today's a very important conversation.
very important. So let's talk a little bit about Shara. So Shara is a licensed clinical social worker and former psychotherapist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She has over 18 specializations, and that includes, but not limited to, grief, personality disorders, psychosis, family trauma, compassion fatigue, military counseling, mindfulness, meditation, ADHD, and anxiety. So, if there's anybody qualified to talk to us today, it is Shara. She's
Yes.
currently the CEO and founder of Journey to Licensure LLC, where she supports social workers through their licensure examinations in combination with wellness coaching. And
Yes.
Journey to Licensure LLC was also featured in Business Insider. So, welcome to our Sunday chat, Shara. It's really great to have you.
Yes.
Thank
Nice
you for
to have
being
you
here.
guys. Thank
Yes.
you.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to where you are now today?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? So I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Hi, everybody. So my name's Shara. Again, I am a former psychotherapist, social worker. Um, I've been in the field for almost 20 years, believe it or not. You can't tell by looking at me, of course. But
Mhm.
I would say I'll probably start out with why I came into the field of social work. I originally wanted to be a psychologist many years ago, but
Mhm.
found out that psychology is more of a science-based field, and I didn't like all the science. So I wanted to work more with people. And my funny story, my counselor advisor said, "Hey, you can should go into social work." I was like, "Social workers don't teach us take away their kids." And he's like, "No, it's a very growing field. I think you should consider if you want to do counseling." And almost 20 years later, as a
You-
social worker, and telling other people that we don't just take away kids, that we are social policy movers, that we are lawmakers, that we are professors, that we are six figures entrepreneurs. Or
mhm.
5 times
Yes.
bestseller, or
Yeah.
that we do have other skill sets outside of what society feels or what media depicts as social work. We are a lot of game changers and a lot of people behind a lot of the that are doing all the dirty work. A lot of times you'll see social workers, besides taking care of children, they may be caring to the elderly. We have an aging
Mhm.
population, or we're talking about mental health a lot, especially in a pandemic where there's a lot of mental health providers because of the shortage and the pandemic, loss of jobs, as well as stress on providers and compassion fatigue. But anyway, I came into the field because I wanted to help others, but that also came from my own story of extensive trauma, growing up in a family where mental health is not talked about. It's often
Mhm.
you keep everything in the house. You don't go share anything outside of the home. And in an African American community, mental health is heavily stigmatized
Mhm.
Mhm.
historically. So not trusting outside providers. And I wanted to change that through going through my own process of healing, going through my own process of being professional, but also someone that has dealt with trauma and had to spend time working on her own healing, even while providing care for others, which can be a fine line to walk as a provider. So
Right.
Mhm.
I know
Right.
I gave you guys a mouthful.
No.
No, but
No.
it was really good. It was really good.
No, it
And
was.
why we wanted to have this conversation today is because of a lot of what's going on in the world today. There are lots of traumatic things going on right now,
Mhm.
especially, for example, not only as it relates to the stigma around, what we have going on as a black population, but especially as it relates to gun violence. So we're aware that you've had experiencing this firsthand, and if you can share a little bit about what happened, but more importantly, how that affected everyone in your family, because that's a big deal. When something happens, it's not only you. It kind of, you know, like a domino effect. It affects everybody, especially if your family is really close.
Yes. So a lot of people on LinkedIn know, and a lot of my clients and social media platforms know that my brother was killed. My baby
Mhm.
brother, 18 years old, was killed February 17th of this year, about 3 blocks away from where I live now. So I passed that location. He was killed in front of a church at 3 o'clock in the afternoon after he got out of school. He had just left my mother's home. And about maybe no more than maybe a block, he didn't even make it, trying to cross the street, and he was shot several times in the chest and abdomen. He did die at the hospital, even with attempts to save him. So it was very traumatic, being as though there's gun violence. I'm almost unfortunately desensitized to it because of where I live. In the last 2 years of being in West Philadelphia, it's increased over time. Between helicopters over my head, between constant alerts of shootings in different places in the city. Now it's every single day. But
Mm.
a couple months ago with my brother, that hit too close to home, especially him being so young. His graduation is actually on Monday. So this week was pretty hard with trying to call his high school, call his senior advisor, and get information on getting his diploma because he did graduate, to get his cap and gown and get his yearbook and graduation pictures, which he did take. But that's the realization that his life was taken senselessly, and the case is still ongoing right now. It's still unresolved murder at this point. It's just senseless. And I talked about it a lot on LinkedIn. A lot of people were wondering if I was going to talk about it because with my son, Jaden, most people on LinkedIn know him. He pops in and out of my videos. He's 7 years old. Jaden has had a very hard year. He was very close to Samir, my baby brother. And when we lost him, Jaden went through a lot of grief reaction, delayed grief reactions. So he didn't react right away, but we started to see him have nightmares, not do very well in school. There were times that he would hear incidents of news, and he's pretty advanced for someone that's 7. He's exposed to a lot that I wish I could shield him from. Of course, he's very tech savvy. So anytime he would hear a shooting or anything, he would just have a grief reaction. He did get counseling and help. I did put up on LinkedIn that he got all A's. He successfully is
Mm-hmm.
out now, going to the third grade, despite all of the this trauma that he experienced with the Texas shooting that occurred a week before that. Jaden's school was on lockdown because there was a 16-year-old boy who was shot 7 times behind a shopping center that's right behind Jaden's school. This 6-year-old boy went to a high school that's right next to Jaden's elementary school. So it was like a trigger all over again. Luckily, Jaden's school has been pretty understanding. For me having a background that I do, and me seeing Jaden just needing, even just as a mom, not even as a professional, wanting to just shield your child.
Mm-hmm.
Before he would want to talk about my brother, we would allow him to. And whenever he wanted to talk to me about it, or just holding his space for him, or letting his teachers know, hey, he's not coming to school today. Yes, I'll make sure he gets his work done, but he's not going. And he had, I think, over 45 days he wasn't in school, um, increasingly so since February, but still was able to make grades, straight A's, and move on to the next grade. But just so many parents that don't have that type of support, right, or don't have someone that's a mental health professional, or don't have that background, it's hard. And with even my
Mhm.
family, my mother's still struggling. We're going to be supporting her on Monday. We're not going to go to my brother's graduation, but it's been really hard. My other brother, Mark, who got accepted to Columbia University for film, um, praise God, because it took him a while to get there,
Okay.
despite his challenges of being a black male. And where we see they're just like a number, right? Every time we turn around, there's a young man that's getting killed. I remember my brother sharing with me yesterday that what he told Columbia when he was in this interview virtually was that the reason why he was pushing to get into that school was that he wanted to honor Samir, who was also thinking about going to school and wanting to go to college. And he said, there's so many young men that grow up that have the background that he does, coming from a low income family, not having, you know, resources to school and academics, and for him to kind of pull himself from where he came from to be able to get into an Ivy League school, and he got in. And that was a month after Samir was killed. So it has affected my family in different ways. They are receiving support from me, but I've also had to make sure I'm taking care of myself, because when Samir died, I was hands on. When Samir was killed that day, I was actually about to have a study group on Clubhouse, and that room usually runs 200 to 300 social workers in that room. And I had my friend Courtney say, I can't, I got to go to the hospital. I don't know if my brother's dead or alive. And I stopped everything, and of course put up a post later that my brother had been murdered. So it's been a lot. But the way I deal with it, I can say, is just through talking about it. I do have my own therapist, through talking with my family about it, but also being a support to them as well, and understanding that everybody's grief process is going to be different. Everyone's trauma reaction is different. But I think what also helps me is also that intellectual piece, that I know and can recognize the signs, but still being cognizant of my own needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think
you're,
that's important.
yeah, self-healing then I guess is very, very important as well, because then if you don't remember to heal yourself, then you won't be able to support others, especially your son, because he's still very young.
Yeah, he's very young. He's actually wandering, wandering in. You want to say hi, Jaden? You usually pop into my life, Sonny. It's okay. Just say
Hey
hi.
Hi,
He's
Jaden,
a little
how are
under.
you?
He's a little under the other guys. Usually he's not
Oh,
camera shy, but he had a booster shot, and the last 2 days have been cold symptoms. So he's hanging in there. He's
oh,
just a little guy.
Okay.
oh.
You want to go lay on mommy's bed for me? Go lay on mommy's bed. Usually he's all on the camera, but
Yeah, he
today he's
is.
really
Normally he's
Yeah.
pretty excited to be with you. So, can you share
yeah.
with us like 3 tips on what we can do to to survive trauma if something happens to us? Regardless, it may not be as traumatic as gun violence, but then there are other things. You could lose somebody in a car accident. However, you lose that person that's close to you. How would you recommend we try to survive it at a base
Well,
level?
at a base level, without being too clinical, um,
Yes, in English
when
so we can understand, please.
yeah, I mean, I mean, I haven't been a therapist for 3 years, so I'm a little far removed from the language usually we use. But for in plain terms, you have to. It's unexpected when life is going to happen. Like I didn't
Mhm,
expect for my brother not to be here. There are
Mhm.
many things I could tell you in my life that I've been through and still don't know how I pulled through.
mhm,
But making sure you have support. So that's one tip I could give. And if you don't have that support, do seek it. Know that it is available. I mean, we do have, there is in some areas of the country there, and depending on where you are in the world, um, mental health resources may look differently, but they're still accessible, they're still there.
Mhm.
So seeking support is the first thing I would say, whether that's a close friend, someone that you can confide in, someone that you can trust, to actually start really just acknowledging those feelings, that they're
mhm,
there. And to it's hard, but letting yourself feel whatever you have to feel and not feel guilty about it. There have been times, even for me as a provider, where I would react in a way that some of my colleagues would think, "Oh my God, you maybe do a certain thing, right?" So I'm gonna give you a quick example, because I've been pretty vulnerable and share my story on social media platforms. When my son was little, and I remember when I was having a really bad time with divorce, depression, the only way that I could cope was alcohol. And the reason why I say that is because in my family, that was a way of coping now. Maladaptive way of coping, which was
Mhm.
really a long-term effect consequence of using something more than temporary that can cause harm. And at the time, I was a therapist. I was, I had all the intellectual knowledge, but I didn't care. I just wanted to stop feeling.
Mhm.
mhm,
And that's an honest thing that people do. Then remember that you are human. So the way you
Mhm.
react to whatever the trauma is, you're going to experience it. There's nothing wrong with how you react. I think
Mhm.
there's so much guilt and shame when people do things that are either out of character or things that, um, you know, you're experiencing something that's traumatic. Um, the way you cope is will be the way you cope. However, I have to say ethically, as someone that holds a license, that when you're ready to seek the help, acknowledge those feelings, and know that you're not alone. You may feel like you're by yourself, but you're not. It's just you feel like that. But
Mhm.
talking through it when you're ready, acknowledging your feelings and seeking support is the best baseline thing that I could say regarding trauma.
Mhm.
Does that help without being clinical?
Yeah. Yes. No, I think those are good. I think those are very good tips because I think a lot of us, not well, I could speak for myself, right? My mother, just like your brother, my mother passed not even a year ago. And that process of healing, sometimes I had to learn that it's to be patient because even as an adult myself, even though that's my mom, you tend to feel, well, I'm an adult, I should be able to be okay to move on. Like to go just go through. I'm an adult, I'm okay. I know she passed, but you just wanna, I guess, just go to just the healing process to be a rush, but it's really not. And I think it's good that people understand that it's okay to feel whatever it is you're feeling, and it's
Yeah.
okay to, honor those feelings. And like you mentioned, when you're ready to seek the help, then do so. Just
Mhm.
somebody that listens to you, somebody who's neutral, because sometimes with family, they're going through their own healing process. So I think it's always good to find somebody neutral that can really give you a clear perspective on that
Mm.
particular trauma that you're going through. You know,
Mhm.
I think that's some
Yeah.
very good tips.
Yeah. I think the
Yeah,
support is important,
yeah.
or at least somebody to talk to, somebody you can trust and confide in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that won't judge you. You know, because
Yeah,
people
Mhm.
sometimes say, "Oh, suck it up, get on
right,
with it." It's not that easy. It's not
right.
that easy. Even if you have a parent, for example, which in my case, you have a parent, they're terminally ill. You know they will die. But still,
Mm-hmm.
when they do die, it's like, you're still surprised. You still have that grieving process to go through. And then
Mm-hmm.
people think after the funeral, you're gonna be fine. No, after the funeral, you're now starting, to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Especially as a parent, how is that? So I just wonder, like, I'm not a parent. So if you're healing, right, you have to heal yourself, but at the same time, you have to heal another little human being.
Yeah.
So what if you have multiple human beings that you have to heal? How,
Oh yeah.
more than, how does that even look like as a parent?
Yeah, that's
You
a
can't,
good point, Karen.
like,
So, Shara,
how do
can you
you,
yeah, share a little bit?
yeah, what if you
How do
have,
you do that?
what if you
Yeah.
have more
And not only
than,
that,
what if you have multiple
one little
little
person.
people? What
I had
about,
three of
you
them.
have,
And then what about if you're in a
right,
relationship? So it's these multiple little people, and then your
right.
significant other. What do you do?
How do you heal
Like, how do you
yourself
survive that, Shara?
while healing other little
Like,
people?
yeah. You have any words of
So
wisdom for us?
I feel like that is a whole bunch of ways I could go about answering that. The simplest way I can put it, I'll speak to my experience and not my professional
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my fiance, he's very understanding of trauma in terms of just holding the space for me. He is my safe space. He's been since I was 15 years old. Even he was one of my best friends in high school. So we had that long-standing history. But just because we had the long-standing history, it still wasn't a very easy road when it came to me dealing with my own trauma
Mm-hmm.
of emotional baggage from a divorce, holding the space for me with a medically compromised child, which he's raised since he was 3 months old. That's not his own. Um, Blending together family with his two girls who are in their teenage years. Um, it has not been easy, I will tell you that. But one of the things that's been helpful is in building an environment where people are accepting of each other,
Mm-hmm.
and willing to let them be who they are. And it's not easy to do, but when there is a foundation of trust, when there's a foundation of love and understanding, not saying that this understanding isn't going to make you want to just come at them a different way at times. But that's
Right.
it hasn't been a kumbaya. Like
Right.
I'm trying to be discreet about this, but there have been definitely times where it hasn't been easy for either. We've had to fight for our. We both come from different backgrounds. He was born into foster care,
Mhm.
and for him to turn out the way he has, he's emotionally balanced, which
Mhm.
for someone with his background, I still even talk to him and say, I don't know how you turned out the way you did because there's so many dynamic factors, risk factors that could have made you go the other way. But he talks
Mhm.
about some of the support he had growing up. And if, without those supports, he wouldn't be where he is. Now,
Mhm.
imagine if so many of our, I know I'm kind of going off of the topic, but imagine if other people who had those type of adverse childhood experiences had that type of support in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
How would their trajectory of their lives change? And that's something I really embrace and talk about on LinkedIn and other platforms, how important it is for people that are providers to be trauma informed,
Mhm.
educated about trauma extensively to help that population. But
Mhm.
in our household, at least, it's been a fight to be able to get to a place of understanding, acceptance, and that cultivates safety. Because if you have that, everything else comes more naturally. Not to say you're not going to have disagreements, but when you're healing, the other person may be healing from something too, or may be triggered because of your experience.
Mhm.
I always think of it that when you bring two people together, you're bringing two lives together. And we're bringing a blended family of four different parents, three kids into the mix. So it's a lot. It's not easy. There's no like three, four tips I can give you. But what I can
Mhm.
Mhm.
say is that um, the ingredients of what creates safety has been accepting each other and respecting each other's space when needed,
Mhm.
creating an understanding and open line of communications to talk to each other when
Mhm.
we're ready.
Wow.
Mhm.
I think that's a very good suggestion or tip. I depends how each individual want to take it. But I think that's important to feel safe and just to be able to say whatever is you're feeling without feeling judged within your household. Especially little
Mhm.
kids, as an adult. I mean, as adults, sometimes we forget that little kids have feelings too, right? They little people. They feel just like we feel. So I think it's important to remember that and allow them to give them, like you mentioned, give them the space to say how they feel, even if they act maybe a little bit out of character because they are going through something too. This whole 2 years, look what these kids been going through, right?
Mhm.
Even up to what's going on right now with the shooting, the kids are being affected as well. Imagine if we're getting affected. How could you assume the kids are not being affected?
Mhm.
So I think it's important just to allow that safety net for these kids, allow them to express
Mhm.
themselves however they feel they need to do that without
Mhm.
feeling bad about it, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That can be
Okay,
hard
so
too.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
As a mother, because there've
yes,
been times I look at my 7-year old or even my 13-year old, and I'm like, wait a minute, who do you think you talk to? But you have those moments, or at least for me, because in my family that. But those are when it comes to parenting, that can be challenging because oftentimes children will test boundaries and they will often
Mhm.
trigger
Mhm.
old dysfunctional behaviors from your parents that may not have been as helpful and more harmful. So I've also had to learn how to parent
Mhm.
just because my parents, they did the best they could, but it also was based off of dysfunctional, emotionally abusive patterns that don't help and actually create trauma for the child instead of
hmm
helping nurturing what it is that they need to manage symptoms of trauma and build resilience.
Mhm.
right, yeah,
I think that's a
yeah,
really good point. I
that
remember
is
growing up, a lot of the times we were told as children that we needed to be seen but not heard.
hurt, right,
And what that did is that even when you wanted to express yourself, you didn't because you weren't supposed to be heard. You were
yeah,
supposed to be
hmm
seen. You were a child. But it's
yeah,
so different now. And we need to remember to encourage our children to share, respectfully because that's the only way we're going to pick up how they're really feeling. So the communication point you made earlier, I think, is a very good point. I'm not going to force you to speak, but let's have some open communication and agree. Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, your child is younger. I have an adult son. He's 24. So let's agree up front to disagree, because you know everything already, even though you don't know everything already. But let's just have a conversation. You'll get there,
Yeah.
Karen, when you have your
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. I'm
Shara,
just
you'll
I'm
get
just
there
I'm
too.
just watching and learning for right now.
Don't take too long to learn. Don't take too long to
I'm
learn.
just watching and learning.
Yeah.
But before we go to the next segment, I do
We do have some
somebody in
people
the
in the comments.
comments
Yes.
made us
Mm-hmm.
ask a question, and let's normally we wait the Q&A to the end, but since
Yes.
it's considered within the topic, I think it's a good thing to bring it out.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea asks, let me go back to her comment.
You found it?
Yeah, here we go. I think this is it.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, a few months ago, I experienced a mental health crisis and felt alone. There was even a per. They at the school. She wasn't. It was. There wasn't even a person who questioned my faith. At that time, I did not lack faith. I was dealing with human emotions. How do you deal with a situation where people drain you but don't reciprocate? You can't see the end, but that's what she means. Don't reciprocate.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you deal with that when you are dealing with a situation and people are not reciprocating or understanding to what you're going through? You
Mm-hmm.
know, how do you
Yeah,
deal with
that's
that?
a good one. And I don't know exactly, because she didn't elaborate on
Yeah,
her
I think
comment about
she,
there was a person who questioned her faith.
yeah,
Sometimes that could be, oh, but don't
yeah,
you believe in
it
God?
was,
Pray, and something will happen. Yeah, you're praying, but in the
yeah.
meantime, what do? You still got to do something, you
So,
know?
what do you
Yes,
do? Because
yes.
sometimes those people could be. Let's be realistic. They could be your husband or your boyfriend or your cousin or your family. This could be those people too. Like that's reality. So how do one person is able to feel safe in a space where they don't feel safe, but they're not getting that emotional need? Like what suggestion will you be able to give them a nugget that they can maybe think about? Um, yeah.
And that's hard. And it's because it can often, thanks, babe. Uh, he's making me a little late breakfast. He hates being in the camera. He's like, I'm on a live. Like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, a real
but
life.
yeah, just put this in the microwave for me. It's okay. I can't eat it yet, but I'm gonna eat it soon. But he loves me. But nonetheless,
He does.
he's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Um, it's I think that's it's hard when it's someone you love, and someone
Mhm.
that you care about, because it you feel almost like you're being attacked. And I've been there. I've been there even with with him. Um, you, I think it's good to take a step back and acknowledge how you're feeling first. And
Mhm.
sometimes when we're angry and there's a lot of emotions that come up, we instantly react. Sometimes I think it's good to, that's why it's such a good thing to have a relationship with yourself. Let me pull back and see what is it about this conversation that's making me, especially if somebody you love, because I'm gonna let you know right now, I've been as hot as this red lipstick. When I mean hot, my mother, she would just nag at my father and go off. That's me.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
uh, talk. I'm going to say what I want to say. Hurt you now. Think about it later. And that
Mhm.
it was something that I had to unlearn in a relationship that my parents taught me that was very emotionally abusive and not healthy. And I would instantly react. So this to Andrea, I would say it is human emotions, but sometimes you got to pull back from the person that you're reacting to. Um, it's either sometimes your own best own stuff, or you might have, if it's someone that you think you can kind of cut loose and they're toxic for you, that's another thing. I've
Mhm.
been in situations where ex partners, ex husbands, um, where I really have to figure out, is this person a real support for me? If they love me and they care about me, they won't make me feel like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though you do have control over how you feel, of our own reactions and not that of the person, but really looking at what can I do to give myself the support I need. Sometimes we can't always get that um, from the people we want it from. Sometimes they're not
Mm-hmm.
capable of giving
Mm-hmm.
that to us. And I know
Yeah,
my
that's
father was definitely
true.
that for me. He was one I was
Mm-hmm.
always seeking emotional support from, but he couldn't because he wasn't capable of it at all. And I found it in other men, which was unhealthy, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing that what I really needed was to heal those
Yeah.
broken pieces and get the support I needed for myself. So I would say,
Mm-hmm.
Andrea, because I could go on and on about it. I would say, if your faith is being questioned, know that it's not always about you. It could be more so about what they're
For the
reacting to or
person.
what they see in you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if they're not willing to support you, then you need to figure out if they need to still have room in your
Mm-hmm.
life for where you're going
Mm-hmm.
in your journey. Does that make sense? I know it kind of,
No, it
I don't,
does.
Well, it makes sense
yeah,
to us. I'm hoping
But
that Andrea, you can let us know in the chat
yeah,
if it makes
please
sense. I I
put it in the
I can
chat.
relate, Shara, and especially that point about capacity.
She put
You know,
two.
some people
Yeah.
just don't
This is a
have the
response.
capacity that we're looking for them to have. And that's such a good point.
That's her response. True, I was looking for support from family members who are not
We're not
believers. They
believers.
cannot speak life to me. And the reality is, I get it. I'm a spiritual person, right? But people tend to forget. Yes, only because you believe in God and you have that faith does not mean that you're not gonna feel things. It does not mean
Mm-hmm.
because you're experiencing something that you lose that faith. You're going
Mm-hmm.
be human. Like
Mm-hmm. And
how
it's
you
hard.
think,
Sometimes it could be
yeah,
hard.
right. And that's unfair to question my faith because right now I'm going through something, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
mm-hmm.
So
Oh
yeah.
God, that's a whole nother conversation about faith
Yeah,
and
yeah,
mental health.
we're not going yeah,
We're not gonna go
we
there.
got
No,
yeah,
that's another lie for another day. But
yeah,
yeah, you kind
Yeah.
of.
yeah.
I also feel like, if I could put the clinical hat and all that stuff behind me aside, um, I feel like you have to. At least for me, I know I'm at a point in my journey now that I have to let people go. I have to leave them where they're at because I can't bring them with
Mhm.
me on that journey
Mm-hmm.
or that part of. And it's hard because they're people that I love, that I've cared about, that I've had in my life for many years. That I had to realize you can only go but this far. There's something I've had to learn from you. There's something you had to teach me, whether it was good or bad. But you cannot go any further with me. And I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
you. There's emotional growth that has to happen on your part to value yourself enough to know when it's time to let go.
Yeah, I think that's people's struggle because they feel guilty if they don't leave, like because you're going to another level in your life and you're trying to manifest certain things and you're trying to self grow. I think that's a lot of us struggle, right? We doing all this
Yeah.
stuff for ourselves, but there's people that might be holding us back with because their way of thinking and they not choosing to grow. So you tend to feel guilty about leaving them behind. Like this is my whoever. I love them. They've been with me forever. They've been supportive. How can I do that to them? And then sometimes that person might feel that you acting funny or you acting brand new,
Mm,
what they say, because you changing. So to them it might be something new. So there's a lot of moving pieces that goes into self growth, what relationship building as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna go into it because it could be another long conversation.
another
But
lie.
yeah, it
Another lie,
is. Yeah,
Shara.
another line. But there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to self growth and being able to move forward with other
Mm-hmm.
people. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So with that, let's go to journey to licensure. How did that came about? How did what journey what lead you to start that
Oh,
business?
but it, actually, to tell you the truth, it was my. I can't. I wouldn't say by accident, but it wasn't something I thought I would be doing. I thought I
Okay.
was going to go into private practice. I didn't think I would be building a coaching business, um, let alone making the impact that I've been making in the
Hmm.
last year and a half. It literally started from a post on LinkedIn. It was probably my most viral post. It's actually in the featured section of my profile. I think it hit over like 100,000 views or something like that. I put up when I passed my LCSW, my clinical exam, that it took me 10 years to pass this exam. It took 2 years. Here are all the things that happened to me along the way. And I talked about from the time that I graduated Howard University with my master's degree. I talked about failing my exam by 2 points in 2011. Took it again in 2013, did pass it, but it took 8 to 12 hours, 3 months straight to do that. I was in my early 20s, so I didn't have any kids then. I was living my best life, but still living in DC. But I started to, life started to happen. I met a very charismatic man that worked at Fort Belvoir. We got married, had 2 children. One of those children dies, who was a stillborn. Asia Rogers, my daughter, I gave birth to her when my ex-husband was over in Kabul, Afghanistan. She was born 7 months, and she was born deceased. And then I had another child, Jaden, who's medically compromised. The doctor tells him he's only got a certain amount of time to live. Jaden's now almost 8 in 3 weeks, but he was supposed to live past a year old. On top of my ex-husband having a baby outside of our marriage, which I found out a year after our divorce, going through depression, working full-time as a psychotherapist for 6-7 years almost. Getting my hours for my clinic, which took 5 different supervisors, and a fly down to Florida to have one supervisor sign off on those hours. Pushing through, being shy of the therapist 9 to 5, and then grabbing a bottle of whatever I could find to drown the fact that this idea that I had in my head about the life that I thought I would have doesn't exist. Living in a house with my mom for a couple of months, where I have a brother that's suicidal. My other 2 brothers are just out in the streets. My sister, she's depressed, and my mother is also depressed. It's a pretty toxic environment with Jaden for a little while until I moved out. But doing all of that, and then the pandemic hits. This is many years after that, and I take my exam, which I worked so hard to get to, and I miss it by 2 points. Pretty devastating.
Definitely,
And then I had a girlfriend who passes the exam in flying colors. She passes her exam, and this is 3 weeks later. I had coached her, and I thought we was going to pass at the same time. Then 3 months later, I lose my job. I lose finances. My accounts are in a negative, like you can't pull nothing out. I can laugh at it now, but it was very depressing, and having migraines every day, taking 6 or 7 Excedrin to get rid of the migraines, which I literally thought the migraines were so bad, I thought I had like a tumor or something growing. That's how bad and painful they were. But I had no insurance. So 3 kids at home, homeschooling all of them, couldn't pass my exam, gun violence, the looting that was going on because of the George Floyd thing that summer, the increased gun violence that was starting to brew in Philadelphia, really feeling hopeless and stuck, not knowing what I was going to do. And I finally decided to ask for help. I said, I need to pass my exam, but there was something I wasn't addressing: my mental health, my anxiety, my ADHD, and my learning disorder. Now, as a provider, I'm used to telling people take their medicine, but the one thing when it came to my own internalized mental health is I wasn't addressing the very thing that I needed to take care of, and that was my mind. And I got on medication for the first time in my life, and I got the help that I needed and did pass an exam, November 6, 2020. But talking about that journey and what I needed to do to get a little piece of paper, that little, that all the things I had to go through to get something that takes 2 years, it took me a decade. Now birthed the journey of passing over 260 social workers at every level of licensure so far from that story. Because I started getting on Clubhouse and wanting to help social workers pass their exam. Like, something's going on here. This post is getting a lot of play. And I started going on Clubhouse and helping social workers pass their exams, having a group every Monday. And it just kept growing. It was like 5 people, 10. Then I hit 100. Then I caught a couple attention of a couple of people that wanted to help me form business. Like, this is not, I didn't want to form business. I was just helping people for free. And then I had a come to Jesus talk with one of my coaches was like, let's have a conversation. And I went from being broken on food stamps to making over $100,000 a month. Um,
Wow.
so, and then everything else that came after that, but it came from the intent of wanting to help people, wanting to help people see that they can do it despite what their struggles are, despite their mental health. And for some of my colleagues who
Mhm.
are can't do traditional learning that have disorders, it takes a different type of process to help them. And I am one of a rarity in my field right now because a lot of people are going to tutoring programs that may not fit their learning style. I actually have a built holistic process for helping people pass their exam, focusing on their mental health, focusing on their daily schedule, focusing on giving them structure, and just holding space for them. I've had
Mhm.
different diagnoses of colleagues that have had TBIs, dyslexia. My first deaf client, her name is Shannon Schreiber. Um, so many people that have had stories of failure, fear, anxiety, trauma, life happening to them, and getting stuck or feeling like this exam will, if they fail the exam, it's not going to, it's going to define their career as a social worker. And I wanted to change that. So that's the story of how it came up, and it's been a roller coaster ever since.
Yes.
Um, but the impact that it's had of me sharing my story, even the pieces that I used to cringe about, it's amazing what happens when you open up and share what can inspire others to keep going.
Right.
So it was never about the money for me. I didn't even, like I said, I never knew that I would be doing this. I thought I was going to be in a cushy telehealth practice as a therapist, and I'm still doing clinical work, just not in the same way. I feel like I'm more so pouring back into my social work community and birthing new social workers to do the work they need to do to know that their abilities or their options can go beyond the field if they wanted to. So,
I think that's good because, like, I don't know if you guys know, my sister just graduated, right, from social work school, and based on her certain discussions that we had, a lot of the time I think academic doesn't serve certain needs. Depends on depends on your disability, depends on what you have going on, and that's good that you tailor your program in a holistic way so you're able to help those who might need a little more extra help. Who might not necessarily who might need a little extra effort. So I think that's a great thing. And I know you have an upcoming class, the upcoming
I
the
do.
8 week.
I do. Yep. I do have a run a 8-week boot camp for, well, I'm trying to call it boot camp anymore. Um, it's a dirty word in the tutoring world just because boot camps are usually like a day. My program is 2 months so that people are with me. So it is a 8-week group coaching program where people get to experience coaching in a different way, very structured way, supportive way through Zoom. It starts July 9th and it ends on August 23rd. It's every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All of the sessions are recorded for playback. They get all the structure, exam content. If they want to know more information about it, I'm not going to bore the viewers here, but for people that are not social workers. But the thing I like about that program is people really get to kind of cultivate their own community and get the support they need from someone that's been there before. And that's what I find that people like about the group coaching and the one-on-one coaching that I do, which is usually 8 to 12 weeks that I'm spending with somebody and getting to know them, but also getting to know their dreams. What do they want to do with their lives, and how do they want to impact the world with their gifts, even beyond the field of just being a social worker, and helping them look at their own health. I've had so many clients that realize going through one-on-one coaching, like, this isn't just tutoring. It's like, no, it's not, because my experience was not tutoring. It was more so me coming up with a program that was going to fit my ADHD, my anxiety, and my busy life. I just actually just had
Mhm.
one client pass of many. His name was Jermaine. He had 6 children and a busy, demanding family lifestyle, and just didn't know how he was going to be able to pass his exam. He passed 2 Saturdays ago. Um, and that was something that he wanted to accomplish, but he needed to, of course, invest into long-term coaching, someone actually push them. So if you guys want to know more about those holistic approaches to licensing, please go to, you can either message me on all platforms. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. There is a link tree link as well, that I'm sure Gail or Karen can probably put up for people to contact me to make a consultation. I do free appointments just to find out if the services I have match what you need. Not everything that I have, that person may need. So if there's something I can help you with, I try my best to do that. So if you're taking a bachelor's, master's, or clinical exam.
Yes, and I did put the link in the chat for anybody that's interested, because I know Andrea asked, have you written books? Yes, she have written. She want to know, have you written a book? So she has, and the link is actually in the chat to the 8-week program and also to the book as well. So tell, I guess she asked about the book. So can we
Oh
can
yeah,
we talk
sure.
about the book?
So my first book called 90 Days of Prayer is for social workers, but I've had other providers buy it as well. It was a book that is a journal that has prayer requests, prayers. I'm a spiritual woman, so this is something that if you're spiritual that you can use. It's more of a mindset piece. So I'm gonna give you the quick background, and I make this very quick. I had an old beat up notebook of my sons from kindergarten, and when I was in my depression for about 8-9 months, I would write a prayer from the Bible, and I would write a reflection piece of what that verse meant and how I could keep myself encouraged to keep going, trying to get my mind right to take the exam again. And it turned into exactly this journal, 90 Days of Prayer, which has prayer requests that you can write down for yourself if you're a spiritual person as you're going through your licensing journey, preparing and prepping and cultivating your mindset around licensing, the fear, anxiety around it. I give a lot of prompts to help people think about those questions that they can ask themselves to kind of fight those cognitive dysfunctional fears, thoughts, feelings around exam testing. Standardized testing, especially for people that have anxiety, is not easy. So that's what that book is for. I do have another one coming out next month called 90 Days of Inspiration. That one is not spiritual. It is more of a generalized mindset journal. So yeah.
Okay, so there you guys have it. Shara has a book. I did put the link in the chat for anybody that want to check it out, and I also put the same link. It also explains about the 8-week program. I don't know. The program do also have, you have like she mentioned, you get 8 weeks of, every week is a session, right? Which is like, I believe, 2-hour session, and I mean, I'll read to you guys if you guys want to. People like to, people.
I wasn't sure about if they actually wanted the information or not. I'm like, because I didn't know who was in the line. I was like, I'm not gonna bore them with all that.
No, I'm gonna read it so they can get a visual piece of what they're getting. They get study
Okay.
guides, they get DSM-5 case studies, audio course, practice test,
Questions.
1200 Quizlet flashback, individual study plan, testing anxiety strategies, recording session for playback, and bonus, it's a private community. And we all know what community stand. We all should, the importance of community. It helps you, it motivates you, it keeps you accountable, right? So I think that's even a better piece, because they have other people that's going through the same struggle, and you kind of feed off each other. And I think that's important. So we're in closing. We're almost about to be closing, guys. So I'm gonna scan to see if anybody have any additional questions, any additional comment before we finally close. Somebody say loving the vibe, loving the good vibe and topic, ladies. Thank you so much, Jenny. I appreciate that a lot. And thank you for watching, everybody. I do appreciate, me and Gail definitely appreciate that a lot. And I don't think there's really that
Yeah.
much comment. So in closing,
Thanks a
any
lot,
last
Shara.
comments? Any last comments you want people to know? Any last thing on closing, Shara, before we exit for today?
Besides Happy Sunday, I'm glad that I took today off. I don't know what everyone else is doing, but yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for allowing me to kind of talk through pieces of my story. and sharing it
Mhm.
with the audience. And that trauma is it's a really big topic, and it's definitely something we
Mhm.
should continue to talk about during this time, especially with the pandemic, which has breed multiple types of trauma, along with its effect of the next pandemic, which is now mental health and the crisis around
Mhm.
being able to assess it, as well
Mhm.
as getting the help that you need. So I just want to encourage
Yeah.
everybody that I hope that you were able to take something from our conversation,
Yeah. Me
that you
too.
can use, that you can share with others regarding your own mental health, and acknowledging when you need help, and to live each day as you can to the best that you can. My grandmother used to always say that any day above ground is a good day.
That's
Um,
Mhm.
true.
Mhm.
That
so
is
She was
definitely
I just
very
true.
want to,
wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No.
thanks a lot, Shara. Karen, what are we talking about next week? So next week is Father's Day, and we're
Yes.
having a very special conversation. Karen, what are we talking about next?
Yes, we are going to be discussing that relationship between father and daughter. How do you start repairing that relationship based on my own experience, what I'm doing right now. I'm working on building a relationship with my dad, right? Just how that looks like for me, how the reason behind why I want to start building that relationship. So it's not to, I think it's something that it's important to have because a lot of us have absentee fathers. Let's be realistic, right? And
Mhm.
some of us maybe because of feelings or whatever, we want to, if our father decides to want to start a new relationship, how does that begin? Right. So I think
Mhm.
that's something that when me and Gail just was thinking about what we were going to talk about, I said, Gail, it took me a week to figure it out. I said, Gail, I know. I'm going to speak about my experience, right?
Yeah.
Process of me building with my biological father. How does that look
Yeah.
like? How did I start it?
Mhm.
So tune in next week, guys, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you for everybody that tuned in. Shara, thank you for just accepting our invitation to our live today.
Yeah.
And Gail, any last words?
No,
No.
happy Sunday, everybody. Make sure you join us next week
Yes.
because it's not only about absentee fathers. You could have
Yes.
had a father that was with you, but like Shara said, it could have been arguing. It could be, we learn a lot from our dads. So join us next week. Thanks everybody who joined
Bye,
us today.
guys.
And we'll see you
Bye,
next week.
guys. Take care.
Bye.